the psychological one, some great porn in the comments,
Oh,
which I am now much smarter about because somebody posted a link. I opened it. Very
oh,
stupidly, I opened the link. I
oh,
should know better than to open links when you don't know where they're coming from.
yeah, yeah.
And got some amazing porn put on my computer that I couldn't get rid of until I called up Google and said, okay, you guys just put this stuff on my computer. How do I get rid of it? And so they taught me how to get rid of it because it was
phone charger
impossibly added.
and my
Yeah.
speaker.
Apart from that, they seem to be receiving positive results, don't they? They're not getting negative. Apart from that mistake.
Yeah.
Like on the.
Did you want this one up on the YouTube thing as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. I've started you're recording as well, but I'm also recording, so we're backing up in many respects. So I presume mine will go fine.
Can I take my shoes off?
I'll add the live transcription now.
Yeah.
You're not muted anymore.
I wondered if you guys wanted to share the screen with me so that I could.
Yep, I can do that. It'll take a second.
Sure.
Hi, Barb.
Hey, Jessica.
Hi. I tried to reach out to Paula to see if she was interested, but I think she has to work.
Okay.
Okay, I made you a co-host, Barb, so you should have access to do the share screen yourself now.
Okay, and I have my assistant on TeamViewer, so I think she can also do what I need her to do. So, Anika, are you working on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you move this window to the other side?
I think they've got control of that window, but yes, I can try.
Shoot. My cord is.
Wait, let me see if I can.
Oh, Barb,
Yes.
you want me to use the short bio of yours or the longer one?
Whatever one you'd like to use.
Okay. I like the longer one just because it tells us more about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did it, Anika. Does that work?
We see your screen. So,
Oh, Alexis is here.
Hello.
hello. So if I don't know. I think it's nice to go around once everybody gets here and just go through each other and meet each other and like just say where you're from, where you're zooming from, your name, and your pronouns if you would like. If that's all right with people, that would be great.
Sure.
How many more people are we waiting for, Susan?
Okay, so we should be ready to go now.
Okay.
Something strange happening in my desktop.
Huh. I have lost my clock. See what time it is. Let's see.
2:02 right now.
It's 3:02. I know Laura is coming. So why don't we just give it just a couple more minutes? We'll start like at 5 after.
But I guess I have time to go get a cup of water.
Okay.
Because that way I can see my notes.
Okay.
So what is that program called, Barb, that you use to share with your assistant?
The one we're using now is Team Viewer.
Team Viewer?
Correct.
Interesting.
And it's a Windows program. I think it's Windows more than it is like Apple.
Oh, okay. Damn.
Actually,
Apple
you can
has
use
something similar.
TeamViewer on an Apple too.
Really?
No.
Okay. Is it like expensive?
No, it's free. Isn't it?
No, actually it's free.
Oh, wow.
You can buy it if you want to get something with some extra bells and whistles, but there's a free version.
Okay. I think that would be helpful with my business stuff. Not all the time, of course. But yeah.
Jess, did you want to start off with introductions?
Yeah, that's what I was just suggesting, like names and where you're zooming in from, and pronouns if you would like, and just basic introduction, just so we can meet each other and know each other. Are we okay to start, everyone?
Laura is coming, so be here in a second.
Okay, so I will wait a little bit, okay?
Well, we could start with the introductions now. People could
Okay.
introduce themselves.
Okay. I am Jess Martin, and I use they, them pronouns. And I'm zooming in from Skokie, Illinois, close to Chicago. And I have been a friend of Barb's for several years. I admire her for the work she does for the state of Illinois. And I'm so happy she's able to be here with us today. And I don't know, who wants to go next?
Why don't you decide who goes next?
Okay.
The next person can decide who's going to go next after that.
Okay, I'll do you, Susan.
Okay. Hold on, I'm finishing this. So I'm Susan Fitzmaurice, and I founded I Love You Lead On, and I've been disabled pretty much since birth, although I didn't know it until I was in my 30s. I had a family that didn't want me to just be disabled, so they made me feel like everything that was going wrong was my fault, that it wasn't a disability. But then my disabilities became prominent and became new, and I accepted and embraced all of it, and I now have pretty much every disability you can have. because I'm hard of hearing. I'm visually impaired. I use a wheelchair because I have a spinal cord injury. I have tons of medical issues, and I'm having surgery in 3 weeks.
Susan, are you from Michigan?
And so let's see. Nelson,
Yes,
why don't you go next?
Or asked if you were from Michigan.
I just a retired psychiatrist and curious about your organization. So I'm here today to listen to you.
Okay. And where are you from, Nelson?
Chicago.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And Susan is from Michigan. Detroit, right? Right, Susan?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly right.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I'm too shy to do this next, but I'll do it anyway. Anyway, so I am Elaine Kobe. I like to use she, they, we because I really feel like we. Since everybody's changing pronouns lately and stuff, I am definitely non-binary. So I came out with as a lesbian in '68, and I acquired a physical disability in '77. Um, I have a spinal cord injury. I was literally stabbed in the back. And so, and at the time I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was very much involved in prisoner rights at the time that I got stabbed. So I've looked at things from many different directions. I've been involved with ADAPT and Not Dead Yet and other organizations of people with disabilities, but I also get involved with other social justice issues across the board. And I'm a songwriter and performer and disability rights activist. I've been arrested 27 times. And I live in West Haven, Connecticut now.
Want to pick who goes next?
Okay, Ernest, you're my buddy. Go next.
I'm Ernest. I'm from England, and I've been disabled all my life. I've been involved in activism from a very young age, not just disability, but other things like anti-nuclear, like CND, anti-apartheid and things like that. Because down the road from me is Green and Common, where they used to have the nuclear missiles from America. I'm also was a part of DAN, which is the British disabled activist group that brought about the British Disability Civil Rights Act, which celebrated 25th anniversary last year. I'm also a filmmaker and photographer. Oh, next, Judy. You're on mute, Judy. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yes. And my name is Judy White, and I'm from Fairfield, Iowa. I only joined the disability community because of 8830 celebration that Elaine invited me to, that Susan set up. But I do have, I've had both hips replaced and have end-stage arthritis on my ankles, so that I use a walker. And Jess's dancing class is helping me become more mobile and more balanced, and having a lot more fun. So I've been doing that from all this work.
Thank you so much, Judy, for giving me that shout out. I appreciate it. So,
You're welcome.
okay.
And I would like to meet Well, I think there's several people I don't know. I'm glad Nelson went, and I know Ernst, and Barb I don't know, and Scott I don't know. And so Scott, can we hear from you?
Okay, actually, my name is Scott Norman Rosenthal. I remember Elaine now from years ago in ADAPT. I have a very peculiar neurometabolic problem. I'm often people insist I'm mentally ill. This problem took my mother's life. It's very real. I do believe that often people with these problems will often be forced into mental health. My medicine, believe it or not, is diet and exercise. I have to eat real food, brown rice, millet. I cook my beans from scratch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I live in Vermont because not being a consumer of the mental health system, I couldn't get subsidized housing in the region where I used to live. It's very bad here. I can't walk the roads because it's not safe, because people harass me, and I've been attacked. And so I apologize for my appearance. My health isn't doing too well right now. But I've been an activist in many ways for many years. And I do still photography and a little bit of videography now. I've got 53 years still photography. The only other thing I'll mention is I was not allowed to finish the 9th grade. But when I was 24 in the autumn of 1977, I was invited to sit in on Stephen Dunn's workshop in poetry at our local college. And Stephen was subsequently awarded the Pulitzer in poetry for the year 2000. So it helped me hone my literary skills. And I'm very glad to be here. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, what is your name again?
Scott Norman Rosenthal.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for sharing. Is there anyone else that wants to go?
I can go really quick. And my name's Alexis Vega. I'm here as kind of like an internship. I'm from Miami University, and I just started being a part with you guys. I would say this past Friday, I connected with Susan. I'm studying to be a special ed teacher with a minor in disability studies. And I would say I'm kind of new to the activist world and being an ally. So yeah, that's about me.
How about Fred? Want to say hello, Fred?
It took me a while to unmute. My name is Fred Talca, and I'm basically a writer. I'm specializing in the history of the disability rights movement. I'm also a poet, and I have a couple of disabilities. Chronic fatigue immune deficiency syndrome, and I'm also a psychiatric survivor. And I'm in East Hampton, Massachusetts, where it's very cold.
Yes, Fred has some great books. Look him up. I think that just leaves Laura.
I have to get unmuted too. I'm Laura Frankel, and I'm Susan's sidekick with Michigan Arts Access. We've been the fiduciary organization for the I Love You Lead On program. And I'm an able-bodied, white-haired woman who just volunteers now. I'm retired, so I volunteer. And I love supporting this whole community and being a part of it. Thank you.
Jess, you want to introduce Barb now?
Sure, hold on 1 minute. Anna. Could you put my speaker? Okay. Thank you. I had it open, but then it went to go by.
Jess, you want Barb to introduce herself?
I got it. Thank you for your patience.
Barbara Pritchard. Who is Barb Pritchard? And who was Lester Pritchard in the disability world? Why did they get into disability rights? Why did she stay in disability rights? Why should this matter to you? These questions will be addressed by presenter Barbara Pritchard from Urbana, IL. Barbara has a bachelor's and a master's in business administration from the University of Illinois at Urbana. Champaign. She retired in 2002 from her position as Director of Programs at PACE Incorporated, Center for Independent Living after 16 years with the organization. In her retirement, she focuses on disability-centered advocacy on the local, state, and national levels. Barb serves on the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities and the Going Home Coalition, in addition to several statewide boards and 3 local not-for-profit boards, where she ensures the disability perspective is taken into consideration. Free. No registration required.
Did everyone get that?
Yep.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can go ahead, Barb.
Thank you all for having me today, and just thank you so much for coordinating all of this. I wanted to let you know my assistant is on TeamViewer, and I have her on the phone as well, so she's listening in and she's going to help move the PowerPoint along and also move my notes along. So, and her name is Anika. So, can you move the slide, Anika? Thank you. Just gave you a little bit of my background, but I wanted to tell you a little more about me, because it's really why I'm involved with disability rights. I have cerebral palsy, which occurs either right before birth, during birth, or right after birth, up to 2 years. And for me, I call it, if you don't know what cerebral palsy is, it's your muscles your brain doesn't transmit to your muscles what they really should be doing. That's in my lay terminology. And for me, I have balance issues and I use a motorized wheelchair, but I'm also severely visually impaired. I have no vision in my right eye, and they can only measure my vision in my left eye with my glasses on. So, and I was born 3 months premature, and that's partly the issue with my eyes. They believe I was put into pure oxygen in the incubator, and that's what killed my retinas. I'm grateful to have the vision that I do have. So for me, schooling started early. I was put in nursery school, or I guess now the right word is preschool, at I think the age of 2 or 3. And it was a segregated class of just kids with disabilities that I remember. And it was not close to my home at all. And I was in segregated classes through up until junior high. I was in a class that was just kids with disabilities in 1st through 5th grade in a school that had regular students. And the idea of that was that people would join the classes as they could. And I did for all of 5th grade, and then transitioned to my local junior high and local high school. When it was time for me to go to college, the University of Illinois back then, they don't do it any longer, but they had what's known as Hell Week, where some of the students who needed more support were brought onto campus a week early to see, could they take a shower on their own? Could they get around campus on their own? What supports did they need? And now there's a whole different way of doing things, but this was in the mid 70s. And so there was a big question whether I'd really make it through there and make it at the U of I. And the second day on campus, I mistook a set of stairs, 4 stairs, for a ramp, because I don't have any depth perception, only having vision in one eye, and found myself at the foot of the stairs with my chair stuck at the top of the stairs, and I was on my hands and knees wondering how I'd gotten there. So I made it through college without killing myself, both getting a bachelor's in business administration and a master's in business administration. Then when I graduated in the early 80s, I really couldn't find a job. The first job I got was being a personnel director, or showing that they needed a personnel office in our local sheltered workshop that worked with people with developmental disabilities. And I was there for about 2 years until they got their funds cut. So I was one of about 40 people that lost their jobs. And from there, I did hourly jobs at Sears, selling service contracts and working at the Cereals Library on campus. But then I landed a job at Pace Incorporated, and that's our local Center for Independent Living here in Urbana, Illinois, where I live. And Pace, if you don't know much about Centers for Independent Living, Pace is one of 22 centers in Illinois, and they're all over the country. They're run by and for people with disabilities. So I worked there for 16 years and left as the director of programs. But while I was at Pace, that's where I discovered my real passion, and that was advocacy. I remember, can you do the next slide, Anika? I remember thinking, advocacy, me? I was at a conference and another person got up and started talking about the need for affordable, accessible housing. And I'm thinking, well, she doesn't appear to have any disabilities. I should probably be doing that. But I'd never done much public speaking or advocating. And so I know the first time I presented at our local city council meetings, I forgot to breathe in. I breathed out and sounded like I was a squeaking mouse at the end because I'd ran out of air. The next time I did public speaking, I was shaking so bad I had to hold on to my papers and couldn't grab a hold of the mic. So somebody actually held the mic in front of me so I could speak. But I've done public speaking a bit more now. And so I've had lots and lots of practice at speaking and testifying at hearings and presenting and gatherings. And next slide, Anika. So I've done a little bit more speaking, and you can see in the mid 2000s, I spoke at a rally we were having at our state fair, and they gave me the bullhorn, and I was revoicing for my husband. But I want you to, the next slide, please. I want you to learn how I met Lester, who became a really important part of my life. He got asked to be a facilitator of a support group at the local Center for Independent Living. And my supervisor brought me in and asked me in front of Lester if I wanted to co-facilitate with him. He didn't feel like he as a male should be facilitating the support group in case there'd be questions that a female would ask that he couldn't answer. So he wanted a female facilitator. And I said no at first. And they said, well, would you do it if we paid you? And I said, yeah, if you paid me. I was supposed to be working half-time, and I was working more like full-time for half-time wages because there was just too much to do. But he kept calling and asking questions, and we'd have lunch or dinner together, and that went on for quite a while. And one night we went to somewhere rather fancy for dinner, and it suddenly hit me, oh, I think this is a date. I just had no clue. It was like, duh. And 2.5 years, we realized how much support a support group would be. So 2.5 years, you want to change the slide. We were married 2.5 years later in November of 1990, and we had almost 19 years together. I'm going to let Lester introduce himself. He spoke often at a special ed class here at the U of I, and one of the professors taped us. So this is the intro that he gave at the special ed class, which I think will tell you a little bit about him.
Before I begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in the 50s. When I was about 2 years old, my parents noticed I wasn't developing quite normal. I wasn't walking, I wasn't talking, I basically just sit there. So they took me to this hot shot doctor in Chicago. He's supposed to be very well known, a world-renowned professional. And this doctor gave me a couple of tests. And according to my parents, after these tests, he sat them both down and told him to find me a home and then go back home and have other babies. And basically, he was telling them to put me in an institution. Well, thank God they didn't do that. They found other ways to deal with my life. And I'm very thankful for that.
So this is a little bit about Lester. I'm going to go ahead while we're getting the next slide up and tell you a little bit about a background on him. He was born in 1949, and he was a week late. He came out breech, which is butt first, with the umbilical cord around his neck. So that's what caused his cerebral palsy, and he was able to see, and both of us have no intellectual issues, but both having CP, there were things I could do that he couldn't do, and things he could do that I couldn't do. But when he was first born, as you heard, the doctor told his parents to go home and forget about him and make other babies and find a nice home, which was a code word at that time to put him in a state-run institution. And his mom wouldn't do that. His grandmother spent a lot of time with him in the afternoons, and she would talk to him about her late husband, which is grandfather Thomas, and move the picture around the room every day for a couple weeks. And one day she asked Lester if he could tell her where grandfather Thomas's picture was, and he was maybe about 2, and she said he flailed his arms correctly in the direction of the picture. And she was an army nurse, and she was convinced, unlike the doctor, that Lester did have intellectual functions and understood. And it was all because she talked to him about his grandfather, and Lester followed everything. He wasn't able to go to school in Galesburg, where he was born. He had to go to residential school in Springfield, Illinois, which is quite a few hours away, about 2 or 3 hours away from where he lived, for a year. And it was a boarding school, so not what you'd expect at age 6. But then from 2nd grade to 8th grade, his hometown built on an extension to the school that was accessible for him and for other people with disabilities in Galesburg. And then they came across, what was he going to do for high school? The only high school at the time that was accessible and met his needs was in Jamestown, North Dakota. It was Ann Carlson Crippled Children's School. And he lived there from September to May, and he said it started snowing the end of September and snowed almost up to the beginning of May. And really, when he went on then, after getting his graduating from high school, I have to back up. It was a fairly progressive high school. It was a lot like an institution because everybody was together. Everybody ate at the same time. They all took the same vitamins. Pretty much the whole boys' wing went to the bathroom at the same time. But they were progressive in that they had teachers with disabilities, and they had taught adaptive shop and really traditional classes and a traditional curriculum. Their principal of their school was a woman who was had thalidomide, or her mother had thalidomide, and it caused her to be a quadruple amputee. But she'd gone on in North Dakota and gotten her PhD, and she was able to be the principal of the school, and she was also a role model for a lot of the students. So she understood living and working and functioning in a world with a disability where you may or may not be accepted. And that helped the kids strive a little bit more at the time. And he finished there, went on to the U of I, got a bachelor's in biology. He told me in biology, the professor linked him up with the smartest kid in the class, and his teammate did the dissections. Because I'm like, Lester, how in the world did you do the dissections? That wouldn't seem to be the easiest thing for you to do. And he said, no, I didn't do the dissections, but I had to pay attention, and I had to do the write-up of the lab. So it enabled both students to do what they were strong at. Once Lester graduated from the U of I, he went on to our local junior high and got 2 associate's degrees, one in computing and one in accounting. And he worked some in a family business and went back and forth from Champaign to Galesburg, or Bannon to Galesburg. and then also was a computer programmer. He also, after the Americans with Disabilities Act passed in 1990, he was one of the people that became a local expert on the ADA, and he would, because he had he took the time to read and understand the law and understand a lot of the ins and outs of the brand new law. So he also was on the Human Relations Commission for the city of Urbana, and that was the commission that also upheld a lot of the Americans with Disabilities Act complaints. So we both did a lot of work at PACE. He called himself PACE's involuntary volunteer, because whenever we got stuck with something, computers or ADA related, we'd call on him to help out. But we did a lot of fun things in our lives. Just to show you, next slide, please. We did some adaptive skiing in Utah for about 5 years in a row. We went out there and did some adaptive skiing, and this is very ingenious. It had 2 skis, and it was so sensitive. They'd put you in a chair that was on the ski, and you could point your finger in the direction you want to go and tilt your head that way, and the ski would just go on the edge and take off. They did have people behind you on a tether just to be sure that you didn't take off and go somewhere you didn't want to go. Lester got, so I skied too, but he was better at it than I was, and he could get down and just tuck really well and control the ski. So the team that we skied with let Lester go and ski on his own for a little bit. He said, but right after he took off, this little kid went across his path, and he's sitting there going, do I take out the kid or do I go and hit the ski fence? Do I take out the kid or hit the fence? Well, he hit the fence, not the kid. And you couldn't really stop very well with the skis. You usually fell over. So he fell over. He wasn't hurt, but, and then we took a trip to New York, and here we are in the Empire State Building, just sightseeing. But getting back to business, and next slide, please. We did a lot of local educating and advocating. We worked with our church to get it to be more accessible, and convince people it needed to be accessible, because we didn't want to get carried up and down the stairs. In fact, I refused to be carried up and down the stairs. As I said before, he worked with the ADA implementation in our city. And then we did a lot of fighting for accessible and affordable housing. And at that time formed the organization called Citizens for Homes, housing options, meeting equity standards. And then, let's see, next slide. We did a lot of work together, especially after I retired. This is 3 of the rallies we did. We did a rally for the closure of Lincoln Developmental Center. The state wanted to reopen it, and it had been an institution for about 383 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we'd gotten a group together to protest one of the committee meetings, and that's the rally you see in the upper left-hand corner. We were involved with National Adapt when we couldn't get the state to pay attention. Adapt members descended on Chicago and took over the Thompson Center, which is where the governor's office was, and helped us fight to get a meeting with the governor, and we were able to do that. We also had 2 rides that we organized, a Freedom Ride and a Freedom Quest, where there were 2 different ones in 2005 and 2009. I believe this picture is from 2009, where we had 115 individuals with developmental disabilities and their supporters in 3 different routes meet at the Capitol. And this was our big rally outside the Capitol, saying we needed to house people in their community, not in large state-run institutions. we still have 7 state-run institutions in Illinois. Next slide, please. Where Lester and I got a lot of our passion and our confidence for doing advocacy work was an organization or a class that was offered by the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities for a number of years. And it really changed our lives. What it was is a class for people with developmental disabilities and parents to take together. People with disabilities were adults, and we were kind of role models for parents that had children that were younger and they had disabilities. So we would learn from them, they would learn from us, and we'd all learn about the disability system, anything from institutions to the cutting edge practices in disability services in schools, in community living, how to do community organizing, how people with disabilities get or don't get employment, about housing, how to run a meeting, anything you might need to learn to be good at doing systemic advocacy and kind of changing things around in the world we live in. Lester took the class in '97 and I took it in '99, and that's where we gained a lot of knowledge and confidence to continue on with our advocacy. Next slide. I retired in 2002 and we really began doing advocacy together. As you could see, Lester would speak, but a lot of people didn't understand his speech initially. So I would do revoicing, and he became chair of the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities. And we would do different meetings together. So we started gaining a voice and getting support for closing closing institutions and getting people into the community. But we were in an unusual spot. We were our own organization, and there wasn't another service organization supporting us. We were able to find some private funding, which was unusual at that point of time. And then we wondered, well, how public did we really want to be with our lives? But we felt we had a story to tell, and we didn't take too long to think about that. We told what we needed to tell, and we really wanted to create opportunities for people to share their own voice and their own thoughts. Next slide. And that was Lester's real gift. He had a gift to challenge people to do that, creating opportunities for them to share their own voice. We did it with protests, the Freedom Ride, the Freedom Quest, which were big rallies that we held. He enabled people to tell their story, people that initially said they wouldn't and couldn't ever talk in public.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Were a couple of days. It took them a couple of days on these rallies to get their courage up, but they were able to tell their story and speak, and even speak to a reporter. So he in particular enabled people to share their story, and that was one of his gifts. Next slide. We saw a lot of changes in things that we tried to do. The Illinois Council put on a conference that's still going on, and I know this is one of the conferences that Jess and I usually see ourselves at and get to see each other. It's called Speak Up, Speak Out. And I remember the very first year we had this conference, there was 135 people at the conference, many of whom had never stayed in a hotel. And we had gone to bed fairly early. We were exhausted, and I don't know, like 11:30, we heard a door slam, and we both had the CP response of jumping kind of out of our skin. And we just looked at each other and started to laugh. We felt like we were the grandparents of the group, and everybody was up and having a good time and talking to each other. We had another part of the conference where we had an open mic, and we thought, oh man, nobody's ever going to want to speak at the open mic. We're going to have this thing and nobody's want to get up. We had people wrapped 3/4 of the way around the room. And I know Jessica's been there, and that's still something that's gone on today. The conference is, I think, in our 16th year.
Wow.
And yeah, we've made some pretty significant changes. Or when we first started, people would say that, you know, they were upset because somebody was taking their food or they didn't like the place they lived in. And now when people talk as a group with the director of developmental disabilities, I hear the verbiage change. And a lot of you have said you've been in different rights movement, disability rights and civil rights movements. And if you remember, that's one of the things that first has to change when people own their own comfort in a group. They see that they can make a change. And so I've heard verbiage change from I want this or I need this to we need jobs with reasonable pay for reasonable work. We need accessible, affordable housing. We don't want to live in institutions, that kind of thing. And that's a big change when people begin to see themselves as a group and kind of own their own civil rights changes. Next slide, please. So the next chapter of my life hit suddenly. October 12, 2009, Lester passed away after 9 days of being in the hospital. It was just like a medical house of cards. Everything kept falling apart and there was nothing the medical system could do. So I had to learn how to move forward. And really this conference, Speak Up and Speak Out, gave others a chance to express their feelings about Lester, but also express their feelings to me. I was really nervous about going to the conference because it was only about 3 or 4 weeks after Lester died that I was at the conference, and I wasn't a complete basket case, but it wasn't, you know, a truly stunning day. But people had an opportunity to tell me their feelings about him, but also one of the organizers put up a picture of Lester and put it on a big table with like a plastic tablecloth and put out markers, and people who might not be able to express their words were able to sign it or write a story or draw a picture or express their feelings somehow on these tablecloths that they ended up folding up and giving to me. After that, I had the ability to help create a video about his life. And now I feel like I need to work with others to carry on his legacy. And part of what I've chosen to do is projects is work on healthcare, and particularly now in the pandemic, work on moving people, trying to get money at the state and federal level to move people out of nursing homes to avoid the spread of COVID, and to continue to work on deinstitutionalization, because unfortunately Illinois is one of the most institutionalized states in the country. The only one that outdoes us is Texas. We have about 1,660 people in institutions for folks with developmental disabilities. So next slide. So I'm trying to continue his legacy, but I have some questions for you, not that you have to answer today, but just to kind of leave you with some things to think about. And it sounds like many of you are already doing some of this, but if you aren't and want something to think about what your passion is. I mean, my 2 passions were Lester and disability rights, but what do you want to do with your life? What are your dreams? What is your place in the world, or where do you feel like you want to land? Just think about it. And I think for those of you that might or might not be struggling with this, it might refocus you on what you want to do with your life. For me, I know now that my life is I'm doing what God wants me to do. And I say that because I really believe he's in my work, but I'm not somebody that goes around evangelizing. So, but I feel like part of what I do is listen. I do listening, learning, supporting, connecting with people, and changing the world around me. When I retired, Lester and I decided that we needed to give back to our community, the disability community, since our families had been so supportive of us in terms of advocacy and helped us become the people we were. We had the knowledge, the resources, the education, the time, and the ability to do systemic advocacy and make changes that we could in the world around us. So I volunteer now. I'm probably on about 20 different local, state, and national boards and organizations. It kind of feels like I'm juggling sometimes, but it's a way that I feel like I can give back, and it's the job I feel like I need to have for now. So I have a challenge for you, or something else for you to think about. There's a quote that I came across the other day, and it says, "I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good I can do." It's from Janice Stanfield. I have no idea who Miss Stanfield is, but I think that quote is real interesting. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. And it reminds me, for me, of a voice I heard in the crowd right as we did a rally for the Freedom Ride that we did in 2005. I never saw this person. I think it was one of the people that sued the state to have the chance to live in the community, but I will never forget her words. It was a young woman, and she said, "You can't forget me. I live in a pit. I want to look back at my life someday and be able to say, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last." And I really hope that she is living in the community and that she does feel she's free at last and has something to contribute to to the society around her. And that's my story. I'd be glad to answer any questions. And for anybody that needs it, I listed my email below. It's bmpritchard, pardon me, bmpritchard, PRITCHARD @comcast.net. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much for bringing Lester's story and yours to us. You're obviously two people that have had a great impact on the disability movement, and your efforts should be remembered and celebrated.
Thank you very much.
Well, I won't say I liked it, but I was moved by your story.
Thank you.
It really was. And I don't know why, but it made me like Richard or Lester.
Thank you. He was kind of a character. Jessica, I don't remember, did you ever meet Lester? Or did he leave us before we met?
I think she's on mute.
Okay, this is Elaine. Could we make it so we can have everybody on the screen? Can we get rid of the PowerPoint so everybody can be on the screen? Yay.
There you go, Elaine.
Thank you.
Now you're on the screen.
Now I can answer your question. I actually went to birthright. I'm Jewish, so my birthright trip was actually the last my mom and my brother met him because they were doing his work at Speak Up, Speak Out. And I was so excited. My mom told me all about you guys while I was in Israel. She never heard of you guys. And she's like, you have to meet this couple. They're the first couple I met in my entire life at CP. You have to meet this couple. And I'm like, okay, for sure. I'll go to Speak Up, Speak Out next year. And it's kind of a bittersweet feeling because I remember all of the stuff they did to commemorate him that year, and it was like I felt kind of out of the loop because I didn't know him, I didn't know you. That was the first time I met you, was at that conference.
I thought it might have been after he passed away.
Yeah, I was so disappointed, but at least I got to meet you, and so yeah.
And I'm very glad for that.
Yeah. I even wrote about you in my blog at the time after when I was done with the and basically wrote about Speak Up, Speak Out. But yeah.
Thank you.
This is Elaine Kobe. Barb.
Yes.
You and Lester are now on my list of heroic people. And I am so thankful to have had the opportunity to be here and to listen to at least a little bit of your story. And also just to remind everybody that some of the most amazing stories of our people and of all kinds of people need to be recorded. They need to be shared. It's so important. And Scott, I am so happy to see you. I can't remember when or whatever, but I remember your face and I remember your spirit. So that's a thrill, and to see you again. And Fred, we have crossed paths a little bit also. And so it does my heart good to see that most of the people on this call I've never met in person. So the few of you that I've actually met in person, it's really kind of cool. And Susan's one of them. But anyway, so our little gang here, we're all over the place, even in another country, and yet we understand each other. Don't you feel the connection? Isn't it beautiful?
Right.
The more stories that are told, the better, because that's what the world needs, is to hear more stories, and get them published if you can, and get them, if there's a film made of them, any way they're told, whether poetry, art, basically any method that you can tell a story, you tell a story, because that's one of the problems with sort of the main media. The main media doesn't really know what's going on. In England, over 60+% of the COVID deaths are all disabled people. So that's about 66,000 people who have died. And so all those stories matter. And the more that they're told, the better, really. And people, maybe then we'll get some changes in terms of the way things are run. It's an astonishing number, obviously a sad number, but that being said, you've got to use these stories to change things, and hopefully that kind of statistic doesn't happen again, and that way we don't have those huge amount of deaths. So the more stories we hear about that are positive and showing people can live a good life, it's a good thing.
I would like to just say something that is related to that, if I can. I right before the pandemic, I got really involved with Access Living, and this guy, he is very physically disabled. Can't do, like, he can talk, but he really can't do much. But he is like, he's not afraid to speak his mind. sometimes I'm like, how do you even do that? Like I don't think I have enough guts to do that. My point is, he went to the governor of Illinois. Governor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, and he said, the healthy people, can we put them in? Because at the time we didn't know how long COVID was going to last. Can we put them in hotel rooms so they don't have to go to nursing homes? And this progressive person, who I thought was progressive, said no. And I was like, and he did a calling on, I knew this before it came out, but he did on the news, like shortly after a conversation, when he told me that he was pissed, he did something on the local news, and he was furious.
I'm not sure which person you're talking about, Jess, and I don't need to know the name, but I am involved if anybody would be interested. There is a group in Illinois, and I can send Jess information, or if there's someone else I should send it to, let me know, but called the Institutional Rescue and Recovery Coalition. We're working with folks out of Pennsylvania and Oregon to do, Pennsylvania and Colorado to do exactly that, move people with disabilities and seniors out of congregate care, nursing homes, and institutions, so that there would be more space, people would be able to do social distancing, and hopefully that would stem a little bit of the virus, because there's a huge number of people that are just basically waiting to die. But in Colorado and Pennsylvania, they're actually moving people out to hotels and getting them safe and stable, and being sure that they're not contagious, and then working to get them moved into permanent housing so that they don't get COVID. And we're working, there's 3 centers for independent living in Illinois that want to do it, and several in other states around the country and that are willing to do it. But we're trying to push on the federal government to get funding, and Senator Duckworth, who's one of the Illinois senators, is interested and trying to get money into some of the COVID legislation to move people out. And also we're trying to get FEMA to declare this as an emergency, and as they would move people out of a flooded house, move people out of these institutions that are deadly to seniors and people with disabilities that are being housed there. So if anybody is interested in that, I can get you the information to be part of a wider group.
What is FEMA?
Yeah, that would be
Federal Emergency Management Agency or Authority, but they have the
agency.
They have the money to declare something as a disaster and then move people to safety. Like if there's a flood or a tornado or a hurricane, they can send money to that area, and they could do that for people with disabilities and seniors in nursing homes.
Yeah. Could you post or send information on the emergency coalition, like a website or some way to get in touch with them?
Sure. We have a Facebook page, and I just heard yesterday that I'm on the coordinating committee, so I will find out where we can give you information. But we meet on the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays in Illinois time from 6 to 7 p.m. And we usually have speakers, but also we talk about what's happening in the group. They also are trying to mount some advocates within, or gather advocates within the nursing homes themselves, to be able to spread the word and to build up some support for people within the nursing homes, so they're not feeling so lost and alone. But it's hard to get in there, but they have a few people in there that are willing to take on this and to kind of help us fight back. But yes, I'd be glad to do that. Would that be best for me to send this information through Jessica, or is there a better contact for me?
We can send it to Jessica. She can pass it on.
Okay. I'd be happy to do that.
Current statistics say that 50% that people with disabilities who get COVID, over 50% of them die.
Yeah.
And if that's what's being reported, you know it's more than that, especially given what's just come out of New York. And Ernest, you might not be aware of this, or could be in England, but New York has only been reporting deaths of people in nursing homes if they die in a nursing home. If instead they go home to die, though their deaths are not being reported as nursing home deaths and may not be reported at all as related to COVID. They're being related to their age. And so New York stats about how much they reduced COVID are greatly exaggerated because of this lie. And Governor Cuomo may be impeached because of this lie.
Yeah. I did see something that he might, there's a call for him to resign, isn't there?
Yes.
Florida is having similar, the reports that Florida has been vastly underreporting just across the board. So
I think a lot of the reporting worldwide is politicized. So a lot of it is underreported and then massaged to suit a particular political agenda, to give either a false impression of that the country is doing fantastically well, and in vaccinating people, and the number of deaths is low, and all that. It's not really wide. That's why it's that widespread. Let's open up all the businesses. Let's get the pubs open, restaurants, and get people out doing things, and trying to give the false impression it's safe, when actually it's not that safe. Which we're getting calls here now. People who run certain pubs are trying to open them up, and they're trying to suggest we're all going to go down the pub and go into the pub gardens and have food and drink beer, and it's all going to be perfectly safe. And that's obviously not true at all, and that's not a smart thing to do. So there's all kinds of massaging going on, I think, about the actual number of people, because it's not just the people in care home. It's also a number of people who have maybe committed suicide, or other people who have got COVID, had then got COVID again, and then died, or had long COVID and then died because it caused made complications with other illnesses. So frankly, all deaths over 2020 and 2021 probably should be re-examined as to whether they're related to COVID. And a good 90% are probably related to COVID in one form or the other.
An issue that really hasn't been addressed a whole lot, and partly it's because we don't have that much information yet, but apparently even if you don't die because of COVID, there are a variety of long-term disabling effects that people haven't been coming to terms with yet. And so even if the death rates go down and the hospitalizations go down, we're still going to be dealing with probably a decades-long public health crisis as a result of this. And I don't know that anyone has really has begun to grapple with that.
What do you mean by we're going to have long-term problems for decades from COVID?
Yeah, I can't see is that Jessica?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, okay. Yeah, well, there are reports that people who have recovered, who have died, and we're told that they've recovered, but there are issues with fatigue, there are issues with cognitive disability, issues with respiratory damage, cardiac damage, and all of these things are long term. And I don't know that, I mean, there are people studying this, but it hasn't, people have been so focused on the death rate, and understandably so. But we haven't really come to terms yet with people who, may have recovered 8 months ago, 10 months ago, and they still can't go back to work because they're too debilitated. We haven't really, we just don't know about that yet. So.
Okay.
And the further complication of people who have been living in the community, getting the personal assistance that they need, either from family members or from PCAs or whatever, and somebody that provides the assistance is the one that gets the COVID. And then the agencies won't send somebody if there's somebody that's COVID positive in the house. And so, it's just so complicated for so many of our people. It wasn't like it was easy to get the care that we need to live independently in the community to begin with. So, and then people are in horrible situations but don't want to draw attention to themselves, even though they're desperate. But they don't want to get caught being desperate because they know they'll get put away, and they definitely don't want to be put in an institution. So many people. And on top of that, right now, it's cold. It's snowy. It's brutal out there in a lot of places right now. So not a good time to have so much housing and food insecurity, and then COVID on top of that. It's so hard. So that's why it's so important for us to keep meeting like this and encouraging each other and saying, hang in there, And please, if you haven't signed up, write to Susan, get on the list for these events, and keep coming back.
Yes, we would love
wherever
to.
you can,
We would love
whenever you can, because we need each other. That's how we're going to make it through this. We need each other.
Including everyone here, including Barb, is welcome to come back and bring a friend or two. You don't even have to go to their house. Just give them the link, and we're good. It's been hard for me because and I'm sure you can relate to it. I have been lucky enough because of my high risk to be getting the second shot. But even with the second shot, I have been home so much that I am kind of feel like a new baby. I afraid to move, afraid to go out. And I used to love going downtown to the city, because currently I don't live that far from the city. I used to be involved in a lot of stuff that I'm afraid I can't go back to it. It's just, I'm sure you can all relate to this, but it's just it's going to take.
Well, and Jess, you are really lucky in that you're young and you've gotten the vaccines, because in general, people with disabilities are right in line with people, that are able-bodied, and the people who are in general getting the vaccines are people over 65. So you can be 50 and very compromised in terms of health and still not be able to get the vaccines because you're not yet 65. So in that one way, where you're living is better than other places.
Now, another factor to all this is that all of the or much of the vaccination program is targeted at people who have internet, who can go online and reserve a space because they have internet, and there are a lot of people who don't have internet, And, you know, I think they're just beginning in the States to try to figure out how to reach folks like that. But yeah, the isolation, Jessica, I feel like I'm in a spaceship or something. It's like every time I go out, I have to suit up, and you know, it's like an extra vehicular activity.
Yeah, and like one of my best friends that I've known, probably one of the longest friends I've known. We've known, she's younger than me a little bit, but we've known each other since I was 9. And she has assistants, and the assistants are getting COVID shots, but she's not. She has a lot of disabilities, but she's not, like, she is not considered high risk. So her assistants or her personal care workers, or whatever you want to call it, they're getting them, but she's not. So she's getting, like, really, I won't, for the sake of her privacy, say her name, but I just feel I can't even go to, like, bring her flowers, or I don't know, but I've never seen her this distraught, and I'm just worried about people in her situation.
Hello.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing in England, because there's some areas where if you live in, you might get a better chance of getting the vaccination, and some people jump what we call postcode lottery. So depending on your location, and you know, sometimes also whether you've got private medicine. So you know you're with a private doctor, and then you're able to get it. So that they're not following their own rules, the governments. In many respects, they set up these rules and say, we're going to go do all the over 80-year-olds first, then they're all the over 74. They're not really doing that. They're sort of, people are definitely, there's inconsistencies, and a lot of disabled people are not getting the vaccination, or for that matter, the PPE equipment for their personal assistance as well, because that's there's another problem.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is, of course, that, you know, there are just so many people. And, well, you know, in the United States, Trump, well, of course, he actually, one principle of his that he stuck to is that try not to tell the truth unless you absolutely have to. And he said there were 100 million vaccines, and, you know, we don't know how many, but there are 300 million people in this country. And I mean, I actually, an aspect of my neurometabolic differences, I believe I have a pretty good immune system. And I even wonder now if I should get one at all, or just leave it for someone else until the end. You know what I mean? Because right now, I mean, they're going for people in Vermont. I think it's over 70 or 71 on up.
But I did hear that, according to our Illinois governor, starting February 26th, which ironically is the day I'm getting the second shot, they're opening it up to all different people like my friend who just have physical disability and speech problems, but not like high risk problems. So then when I told her that, she was happy. So
What state are you in?
Illinois, just like Barb, but we're on opposite sides of each other. I'm near Chicago, and she's from Urbana, which is more of a rural town by the Illinois, like Uvi down in Illinois.
But that's not the only problem with in terms of your location. You've also got the problem of how do you get to these centres to get the vaccination. We're having some locations have got centres which are you know, in an area where you could get a bus to, and others are, well, you'd have to have a car, and they're doing them like 1 o'clock in the morning. So you know, that's great for people who've got cars who can get there, but not a lot of disabled people don't have personal transport.
No.
A lot of poor people, a lot of poor people.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say that one thing the pandemic has done is it's exposed all of the all of the problems we've always known were there, and now they're highlighted. I mean, in the States, this morning I saw a report on how, you know, they want to open up the schools, but one of the CDC guidelines is that schools have to have adequate ventilation. Well, there are a lot of schools that don't. And we've been neglecting, we've spent 30 years not investing in school infrastructure. So now we have all these dilapidated schools that possibly could be opened, but they can't because the ventilation systems are shot and have been needing repair for, you know, decades, but we just haven't bothered to invest in that. Anyway, I'm sorry, Scott, you were going to say.
I heard something about that in Los Angeles, this woman, Ask a Mortician on YouTube, Caitlin Dowdy. And it's a horrible thing, but a lot of migrant workers, mostly undocumented, they come up from Central and South America, and they work hard and do work that people from the US don't want to do anymore. They go out and they do it. They don't qualify for medical help. They don't qualify for food stamps. And they've been losing their lives, and it's pretty awful. But the funeral homes don't have the capacity to take in their remains. And it's become, I don't know what it is at this point, because there was some scrabbling to do something about it. Another person on YouTube, Bo, the Fifth Column, informed her and the public on one of his videos that the government does have plans in place. But I mean, they can't, it's a horrible thing. I don't mean to upset anybody, but they can't even, like, your loved one is dead and you don't even know what to do with the corpse, with their body. And that's a horrible thing. And these are people, you know, you could talk about frontline, this and that, but in reality, you know, we have to keep, it's all important that we keep the structure of what we have here, our civilization, our society, our culture intact. And these are people that are helping do it, and they're losing their lives.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Barb. Like, is one of the committees you're on focusing on just COVID issues, or is it all kind of woven into each other?
You said one of the issues I'm focusing on, is it just COVID? No, they're kind of focused, they're kind of a combination of issues for the Institutional Rescue and Recovery Coalition. They're all sort of woven into each other. Still, it's people with disabilities not getting, and seniors not really getting their basic rights or civil rights met. But I mean, there's a ton of things I could be focusing on, and I just choose to be more focused on healthcare and right now, you know, accessible, affordable housing and things related to COVID, because there's more I could do, but I don't have any more time on my plate to do it in.
Yeah, I know. So, but I was just wondering where your main focus is for current now. So that's
yeah, it's probably still getting people out of institutions, and now related to COVID even more so, but also healthcare, because I'm on. There's a local free clinic that several churches are involved in, and I'm on their board, and I'm on another healthcare advocacy group in our town. I belong to a women's group. I'm on several committees for the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities. I'm on the Statewide Independent Living Council Advocacy Subcommittee, a professional women's group, And and I think I'm missing a few others in there, but I don't know if it gets me into more trouble or keeps me out of trouble.
You still do, you're retired from PACE, right? So you're not PACE anymore.
I'm not with Pace anymore, but you know, they'll ask me questions, or mostly I'll send them. People might email me questions, and if I can't answer, feel like they get better service at Pace, I refer them to Pace. I know a few people there, but I've been gone from there over 18 years now, so not as much a direct connection, but still some connection.
Okay. And I also wanted to tell people that the shirt I'm wearing, we're selling, even though it's past the 88.30, that we are selling these t-shirts. So that's why I have it on.
Yay, t-shirts. I have to bow out. I have another meeting I'm going to, but it's really wonderful to see you all. And
For coming and
excuse me?
thank you for coming.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you all. And I'm going to save the chat, and I'll look for the information. Oh yeah, there it is, ADA 30. Yeah. And I'll look for the information on the emergency housing, whatever, the rescue committee.
I'll get that to Jessica probably tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you all. And I also need to leave because I've got a few other things I need to get done this afternoon.
Okay, me too.
For you to come. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Barb. Thanks for
so
the
much.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Just a joy to meet you and to be in such a wonderful crowd of people. This has been a blessing. Thank you each and all.
Yes.
Thank you all.
I really, I've been getting involved in some Zoom meetings, and because I'm very isolated up here. You know, this has been wonderful for me. To be honest, I mean, I'm pretty upset with the left as well these days, but the right, specifically the white supremacist movement, has brought out people's tendency to bully, some people's tendency to just bully. And even if they don't have to know I'm Jewish, but just, you know, I have a way of subliminals, which just happens when you're really neurodiverse. You know, it's hard to put your finger on. But I get picked on. I mean, the road's not safe to walk. And I was walking miles. I was living out of a van in and around Philadelphia, but I was walking miles a day. I was bicycling. And I came up here just to get affordable housing because it is not legal. It is a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act that to get on the housing lists for disabled in Philadelphia, you must be a consumer of the mental health system. And that's a violation of the ADA. It really is. I mean, you know, I probably wouldn't be as disabled as I am if it wasn't for the drugs psychiatrist gave me when I was a kid. You know, so I'm reached, you know, I'm in a community now of here and with some poetry groups and, you know, and Elaine, it's like, you have no idea. It's amazing. It's
Big
amazing.
hug. Yeah, I remember you. I remember you.
Well, I'm going to send people some poetry, and there's a 23-minute video where I do lyrics. It's not my best. I promise it's not my best, but
you and Ernest should be hooking up a bit. Ernest Ernest is a filmmaker too.
But Ernest, you're over in England, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they make a telephoto lens.
Well, not that far.
But anyway. I would like to talk to you.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Ernest is.
Go on, Judy.
Oh, I was just going to say, Ernest is always worth talking to and listening to. It's been a real pleasure to have him in our group.
Thank you.
It's pretty amazing that I would think that seriously, back not that long ago, if you were broadcasting something from England, it was a noticeable delay, across the ocean or to England. And what won't they think of next?
Yeah, I think they bounce it off of satellites now. That's part of what's going on. I don't understand any of it, but I think that's part of the game now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I know I was one of the leaders, but I have to go now because I have to get ready for my actual work that I am.
Okay. Well, then
Likewise.
that's understandable, and I think it's about time to close down. So big hugs to everyone. Be gentle with yourselves. Remember, self-care is important. I am gradually factoring in my own survival a little bit better. I've made progress in that direction. Please work on it, each and all, and remember to play. Play is very important. You won't make it through if you don't have fun and have some playtime.
Yes.
Okay, ta-ta. I'm going to. See you all next time. Hasta la vista.
Everybody will hear from me. I'll send everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Ernest.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Yep.
Thank you.
I look forward to receiving it, Scott.
I will.
Whenever you
I'll
send it.
as soon as I get it. Susan, do you have the capability of taking me off?